Welcome to Learn English with Sara, where we learn English through meaningful stories. Today's story is about a mother's endless hope and how love can find its way home even after years of pain. Listen carefully, follow the sentences, and feel the emotions behind each word. My name is Susie. I am 45 years old and an only child. My parents were kind, quiet people, and I grew up surrounded by their love. I thought life would always stay peaceful, but life has a way of testing even the gentlest hearts. 15 years ago, my world changed forever because of one small, beautiful reason: my baby girl, Emma. Emma was only 5 months old when she was taken from me. At that time, I lived with my husband and his parents in their large but cold house. From the first day, they never accepted me. They said I was not good enough for their son and treated me like a stranger in my own home. When my husband died suddenly in an accident, their anger toward me only grew darker. I was young, poor, and alone. But I still had Emma, my light, my reason to wake up each morning. One afternoon while I was at work cleaning offices, my mother-in-law came to visit the house. When I returned that evening, the cradle was empty. Her clothes, her toys, every trace of her tiny life gone. I screamed her name, searched every room, every corner until my voice disappeared. The next morning they told me calmly, "Forget her. She has a better family now." They had given my baby away for adoption without my permission, without my love. I went to the police crying, begging for help. But they told me it was legal because I was too poor to raise a child alone. Those words killed something inside me. From that day, I never saw Emma again. But a mother's heart never lies. I knew she was still alive somewhere. Every night I whispered into the darkness, "Emma, I will find you." Years passed. My husband's parents died in a car accident, taking with them the secret of where they had sent her. I learned to survive one day at a time. I worked as a caregiver, cleaning homes, taking care of elderly people, trying to fill my days so I wouldn't drown in memories. Still, every night before sleep, I held the small silver bracelet that once circled my baby's tiny wrist, the only piece of her I had left. Now I live with my grown son, Daniel, and his wife, Patricia. Daniel is gentle but easily influenced. Patricia is strong but cold. She doesn't like me. She says I make her nervous, that I control her home. It isn't true, but I don't argue anymore. Today we fought again. Her voice rose sharp and full of anger while Daniel stayed silent. That silence hurt more than her words. Finally, Patricia shouted, "You should leave. This house is not for you anymore." Daniel looked down, unable to meet my eyes. That was the moment I realized my place in their world had ended. Quietly, I packed a small bag, some clothes, a little money, and Emma's bracelet. I stepped out into the cold evening air with nowhere to go. The streetlights flickered above me like distant stars. I sat on a bench near the bus stop and whispered, "God, if you still listen, please show me what to do now." Then I heard a voice behind me, deep, calm, and kind. "Are you okay, ma'am?" I turned and saw a man standing nearby holding a paper cup that smelled like tea. His eyes were gentle, honest, the kind of eyes that make you feel safe. "It's late," he said softly. "You shouldn't stay here alone." I nodded, unsure of what to say. He offered me the cup. The warmth of the tea spread through my hands, and for the first time that night I felt something like peace. "My name is Richard," he said with a small smile. "I live a few streets away." "My name is Susie," I replied quietly. He repeated my name slowly as if memorizing it. We sat together in silence. It was not the heavy, lonely silence I had known for years. It was calm, almost gentle. After a while, he said, "I know a family that needs a caregiver. If you go there tomorrow, tell them I sent you. A job, shelter, maybe even a new beginning." I thanked him, and before I could ask more, he nodded politely and walked away into the night. That night, I slept on a bench near a small church. The cold air bit my skin, but inside I felt strangely warm, like hope had quietly returned. The next morning I followed the address Richard had given me. It led to a large, clean house with a small garden full of morning sunlight. A young woman opened the door. She looked surprised, but kind. "Hello," she said. "Can I help you?" "I was told you might need a caregiver," I replied. "A man named Richard sent me." Her eyes brightened instantly. "Richard, that's my father. Then you must be the new caregiver he mentioned. I froze. Her father, my heart began to race. She smiled warmly. Come in, please, I'm Sophie. And just like that, without knowing it, I stepped into the place where destiny had been waiting for 15 years. Sophie welcomed me with such warmth that I felt almost embarrassed by her kindness. The house was peaceful, filled with soft sunlight and the faint scent of jasmine. She led me to the living room where family photos decorated the walls. I noticed how happy everyone looked in them, and a quiet ache grew inside me. I had forgotten what happiness in a home could feel like. Sophie explained that her father Richard needed help because he worked too hard and often forgot to rest. He doesn't like to admit it, but he's not as young as he used to be, she said with a playful smile. I nodded and assured her I would do my best. My father has a good heart, she added softly. He helps many people, but he forgets to help himself sometimes. Later that day, I met Richard again. He smiled when he saw me standing in the hallway. Ah, you found the place, he said warmly. I nodded, grateful, but still nervous. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, I said. You gave me hope when I had none. He shook his head gently. Sometimes, Susie, we meet people not by accident, but because life knows exactly what we need. Those words lingered in my heart long after he walked away. That night, I lay in the small room Sophie had prepared for me. The bed was clean and soft, the air smelled of lavender, and for the first time in years, I slept without fear or sadness. Over the following days, I settled into my new job. I prepared meals, cleaned rooms, and reminded Richard to take his medicine. He often worked late into the night, his desk covered with papers and books. Sometimes I would quietly place a cup of tea beside him. He always looked up with a gentle smile and said, You take care of everyone, Susie. Who takes care of you? I never knew how to answer that. Sophie was sweet, cheerful, and curious. She loved to talk, and in her presence the house felt alive. One afternoon while I was folding laundry, she joined me in the kitchen. Can I ask you something personal, she said. Of course, I replied. Did you ever lose someone you loved deeply? The question froze me for a second. I looked down at the soft white towels in my hands. Yes, I said quietly. A long time ago. She nodded, as if she understood something unspoken. I always felt like something was missing in my life too, she whispered. I don't know what it is, but sometimes it feels like I've been waiting for someone I've never met. Her words pierced my heart. There was something familiar about her voice, the way she spoke, the way she smiled. But I shook the thought away. I couldn't let my imagination build false hope again. I had suffered enough from dreams that never came true. Weeks passed peacefully. I began to feel part of their family. Richard treated me with respect and gratitude, never once making me feel small. Sophie often brought me small gifts, flowers from the garden, a scarf she had knitted, a warm smile when I needed it most. I hadn't felt this cared for in years. Then one afternoon something happened that changed everything. While I was cleaning Richard's study, I noticed a small framed photo on his desk. It showed a young Richard holding a baby girl. I picked it up carefully, smiling at the sweetness of the picture. Then I turned it over and froze. On the back, a date was written, the same year my daughter Emma was born. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. My fingers trembled. Could it be a coincidence, or was this the universe whispering something I didn't yet understand? I put the photo down quickly, afraid someone would see the tears in my eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Sophie's face, her bright eyes, her gentle smile, the way she laughed, the warmth in her hugs. There was something inside me that screamed, "It's her!" The next morning, Sophie came to me holding a small box. I found something strange in my drawer, she said with a shy laugh. It's a baby bracelet. I've had it since I was little, but I don't know where it came from. Dad said it was with me when they adopted me. My blood turned cold. She opened the box. Inside lay a tiny silver bracelet, the same shape, the same letters. Emma. My hands began to shake. Can I see it? I whispered. She nodded and placed it in my palm. The world around me disappeared. It was identical to the one I kept hidden in my bag. Every letter, every mark the same. I managed to smile weakly. It's beautiful, I said, my voice breaking. She smiled and went back to her room, unaware of the storm inside me. I rushed to my room, locked the door, and took out my own bracelet. Side by side, they looked like twins, Two halves of one truth I had been chasing for 15 years. Tears blurred my vision. Could it be possible? Could Sophie be my Emma? That night I sat on the edge of my bed praying softly. God, please help me see the truth. Don't let my heart be fooled again. As I wiped my tears, I heard footsteps outside my door. A soft knock followed. Susie Richards' calm voice called, "Can we talk? There's something I need to tell you." My heart skipped a beat. I wiped my face and opened the door slowly. His expression was serious, almost nervous. "Please sit down," he said quietly. "There's something important you need to know." Richard sat down across from me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. Guilt, sadness, maybe fear. His voice was soft, almost trembling. "Susie, I didn't tell you everything about me," he began. I stayed quiet, waiting. "I didn't want you to think of me as a rich man," he continued. "I wanted you to see me as I am a person, not the things I own." I nodded slowly. "I understand," I said gently. "You showed me kindness when I had nothing. That means more than money." He gave a faint smile. "Thank you, but there's more." His gaze dropped to the floor. "My daughter, Sophie. She's adopted." For a few seconds, my heart stopped beating. The words echoed in the air like a thunderclap. "She was only 5 months old when I adopted her," he continued. "The woman who gave her up said she couldn't raise her alone. The adoption papers came from a small town far from here. I never met the mother." My body went cold. My mind raced. The same age, the same time, the same bracelet. Everything lined up like pieces of a puzzle that had waited 15 years to be completed. I swallowed hard. My voice came out in a whisper. "Do you remember the name of the town?" He frowned slightly. "I think it started with an E." "Elmsville, maybe. Why do you ask?" My hands trembled. That was my town. That was where Emma was taken from me. I could barely breathe. "Richard," I whispered, "I think Sophie might be my daughter." He looked up sharply, disbelief and shock flashing in his eyes. What did you say?" I stood my knees weak and reached for my bag. With shaking hands, I pulled out the tiny silver bracelet, the one I had kept all these years. "This was my baby's," I said, holding it out to him. "Her name was Emma." He took the bracelet, carefully staring at it as if it were something sacred. His lips parted, but no words came. "Sophie has one just like this," he said finally. "She's had it since she was a baby. She never knew why." The air in the room felt heavy, almost electric. I whispered, "If this is true, Richard, everything changes." He nodded slowly, his voice quiet but steady. "Then we'll find out the truth together." That night he helped me contact a DNA testing center. We agreed to do it secretly, just between us, until we were certain. My hands shook as I swabbed my cheek. I was terrified, but more afraid of losing hope again than of being wrong. When we mailed the samples, Richard said softly, "No matter what happens, I'm glad I met you." His words brought tears to my eyes. The next few days crawled by like years. Every tick of the clock felt like a question. I tried to work as usual, but my thoughts were always with Sophie. I watched her as she read, as she laughed, as she hummed to herself in the kitchen. Every gesture, every smile, she reminded me so much of the baby I once held in my arms. At night I prayed over and over, "Please God, let this be real. Let me find her again." Finally, one morning, Richard walked into the living room holding an envelope. His face was pale. "Susie," he said quietly, "the results are here." My knees weakened. I could barely breathe as he opened the envelope. His hands trembled slightly. He read the paper silently, his eyes moving from line to line. Then he looked at me. His voice broke when he whispered, "Susie, it's true." I covered my mouth as tears flooded my eyes. "My baby, my Emma," I whispered. My body shook uncontrollably. 15 years of pain and prayer exploded into that one moment of truth. Before I could say anything more, we heard a voice behind us. "What's going on?" We both turned. Sophie stood in the doorway, confusion written all over her face. Richard froze, the paper still in his hand. I wiped my tears quickly, but it was too late. She had seen. "Sophie," he said softly, "there's something important we need to tell you." She stepped closer, frowning. "Why are you both crying? Is something wrong?" Richard hesitated, then handed her the paper. "Susie took a DNA test," he said carefully. Her eyes widened. "A test? Why?" He looked at me silently, asking for permission. I nodded, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself think. Because she had reason to believe. Richard said slowly that you two are connected. Sophie's gaze moved between us. Connected? What do you mean? My voice trembled as I whispered, Sophie, I think I'm your mother. For a second, time stopped. The room went utterly silent. Sophie blinked, her face pale. What she whispered. Tears filled my eyes. You were taken from me when you were a baby. I have searched for you ever since. She stared at the paper in her hand, her lips shaking. Is this true? She asked Richard. He nodded slowly. Yes, the test confirmed it. Her breath hitched. She looked at me again, her eyes wide and wet. Then suddenly she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. I froze for half a heartbeat, then held her tightly, so tightly that I never wanted to let go. After 15 years, I was holding my daughter again. We cried together, trembling in each other's arms. Richard stood beside us quietly, his eyes filled with emotion. Now you both know the truth, he said softly. And that's what matters most. Sophie turned to him, her voice thick with tears. You will always be my father too, she whispered. Richard smiled gently, and I saw in his eyes a deep, peaceful acceptance. Love had bound us all in a way no one could ever undo. For a long moment we simply stayed like that, three people bound together by love, fate, and tears. Sophie's arms trembled around me and I could feel her heartbeat against mine. The years melted away. Every sleepless night, every prayer, every tear I had shed now found its meaning in that embrace. When we finally let go, Sophie wiped her eyes and whispered, I don't know what to say. I grew up believing my mother died when I was a baby. I nodded gently. That's what they wanted you to believe. But I never stopped looking for you, not even for one day. Her voice cracked. I used to dream about a woman who sang to me. I never saw her face, but her voice always felt so real. She smiled through her tears. Now I think it was you. My heart broke and healed all at once. I held her face between my hands and said softly, Yes, it was me. I used to sing to you every night. You always smiled in your sleep. She closed her eyes and leaned into my touch, tears sliding down her cheeks. Richard stepped closer and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. You both deserve to know the truth, he said quietly. And maybe now we can all start healing together. In the days that followed, our lives changed in ways I never imagined. Sophie wanted to know everything about her real father, about where I came from, about how I survived all those years. I told her little by little, trying not to let bitterness slip into my words. I wanted her to know love, not pain. Love, not. I don't hate them anymore, I said one evening as we sat together in the garden. Your grandparents, they made terrible choices, but I forgive them now. Holding on to anger would only poison my heart. And I want to love freely again, especially now that I have you. Sophie took my hand. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Mom, she whispered. That one word, Mom, made my chest tighten with overwhelming joy. Richard often joined us, sitting quietly as we talked. I could tell the discovery had shaken him deeply, too. He had raised Sophie with all his heart, and though the truth had changed everything, his love for her never wavered. One evening he said softly, You may not be my daughter by blood, Sophie, but you'll always be my daughter by choice. Love doesn't need permission, it simply exists. Those words touched both of us deeply. I saw how much he loved her, and I knew then that Richard's heart was something rare, honest, selfless, full of grace. Weeks passed, and our bond grew stronger. Sophie and I spent hours cooking together, walking in the park, sharing small stories of our days. I told her how I used to whisper to the stars at night, hoping she could somehow hear me. She laughed through her tears and said, Maybe I did. Maybe that's why I always felt there was someone out there waiting for me. Life began to feel lighter, brighter. I could finally breathe without the weight of grief pressing on my chest. One morning Richard asked me to meet him in the garden. The air was cool, the sky pale blue, and the scent of roses hung around us. He looked nervous, almost shy. Susie, he said, his voice low and sincere, you've brought peace into this house. You've given Sophie the truth she always needed, and you've reminded me what love really means. He paused, his eyes steady on mine. I don't want to lose you again, not in any way. I want you to stay. Not as an employee, not as a guest, but as my partner. For a moment I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. Richard? I whispered, my heart racing. He smiled softly. I'm asking if you'll marry me, Susie. Let's build a new life together with Sophie, with honesty, with love. Tears filled my eyes once again, but this time they were tears of joy. After everything life had taken from me, it was finally giving something back: love, family, peace. I nodded slowly. Yes, Richard, I said. I would be honored. When Sophie heard the news, she screamed with joy and hugged us both. It's about time, she said, laughing through her tears. You both deserve happiness. A few weeks later, we held a small wedding in the garden. The ceremony was simple: no big decorations, no expensive clothes, just flowers, sunlight, and the sound of laughter. Sophie stood beside me as my daughter, holding my hand while I said my vows. Richard looked into my eyes and said, You taught me that love doesn't need perfection, only truth. And in that moment, surrounded by the gentle hum of life and the scent of blooming roses, I felt complete. That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered the same words I had said for 15 years, but now they carried a new meaning. Thank you, God, for giving me back my daughter, and for showing me that love can return even after the darkest nights. Sometimes we must lose everything to discover what truly matters. Pain teaches us compassion, loss teaches us gratitude, and love, real love, teaches us that nothing is ever truly gone. It just waits for the right time to return. So to everyone listening, never stop believing in the power of love, no matter how much time has passed. Because love, like truth, always finds its way home. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to Learn English with Sara for more touching stories that help you learn English through emotion and meaning. And tell us in the comments, do you believe love can find its way back even after years of pain?